So welcome everybody to our last AI meetup of the year. Thanks for coming. We have a special speaker today, John Michael Thomas. He's a best-selling author. He flew in to be here for this, so thank you very much for coming. What we're going to do is he's going to give a talk, and there'll be questions at the end. When we do that, I'll run the mic around for everybody. Again, we're on the AI Meetup. We're at meetup.com. The AI Meetup is on there. If you haven't already signed up, if you do, I send out an email for every event, tell you what we're doing, and sometimes announce other events for like-minded folks. With that, I guess we'll go ahead and get started.
All right. Well, hi, everybody. I'm John Michael Thomas. I met Tim at another AI conference. We were both speakers on round tables. He flattered me and told me that he thought some of the things I said were smart, so he asked me to come and speak to you here. I'm going to give you a really quick rundown on who I am. I'm a fractional CAIO. CAIO is a new thing. I'm a fractional one. There's only a handful that I know of in the world, and that means that I go to companies and I help them with AI transformation, AI adoption, and AI strategy consultant. My track record, I have over 40 years in tech. I'm getting close to 60 here. And I've been through 5 major AI is the 5th major technology transformation I've been through. So when you've been around a while, you've seen a few of these, you start to see things rhyme. You start to see some of the same patterns repeated. Some of those are good patterns, some are not so good patterns. And so I started out as an engineer. So I started out as hands-on keyboard. I was a software engineer. I got sent around the world to solve problems after everybody else had failed to solve them. I was the last line of defense. So in the field, I learned how to become a systems engineer and then an everything engineer, because by the time I got done with it, I was going out into the field. They're saying, we got this technical problem. I got out there. This was not a technical problem. This was a political problem. It's the salesperson sold something we didn't have. We had competitors that sabotaged our installations. I mean, you name it. It was my job to fix it. And at the company I worked at, we had a motto, don't come home without it. And so I embraced that, which meant I would go out for 3 days to solve a problem, and I would come back 4 months later when it was actually solved. So I got very good at solving problems, and actually the first book I wrote, which I haven't published, is on how to solve really difficult problems. But nobody wanted that book, so I focused on a different book here. And so since about March of this year, I've started my own consulting business, and I went to people and I said, what is the biggest business challenge you have? What's the biggest problem you need to solve? And everybody said AI. And so I said, okay, maybe I should read the tea leaves here, and I had already been successful. In 2023, when AI kind of broke out, I was running operations at an enterprise software company. I was turning around one function. I had 2 more I just started, and I was firing up 2 new functions. I did not have time for the world to change, but the world decided to change around me. So I took over and I said, okay, I will run the AI initiative. And we were successful in building a whole new suite of AI features into our product in about 5 months. And I got in a little trouble because everybody said, we need to do it now. We need something fast. It needs to look good. And I said, well, I don't want to build eye candy, because eye candy is going to be no good in 6 months, right? I said, I want to make sure that we build AI in a way that our customers are actually going to use it and get value out of it. And so we did that. We built the infrastructure. We built features on top of it. And one of the things I learned when I went through this is I started as an engineer, but I hate prompt engineering. Like, I hate it. The first time I ever saw prompt engineering, I said, there is no way on God's green earth that we are going to teach everybody, all these non-technical people, to do prompt engineering. It isn't going to work. That's one of the failure modes we've seen in every other technology transformation I've been through, is when you try to force non-technical people to learn technical skills. I said, this isn't going to work. And so as I was going through it and learning how to use AI, one of the things I tried, just out of frustration, was to start talking to it like I talk to my direct reports, to the people that I manage. And something really amazing happened. It worked. And it got very good. It gave me very good answers when I just gave it the same thing that I give to my employees. I say, here's why we're doing it. Here's what I need you to do. Here's what I need you to not pay attention to, right? So I started talking to it like a manager, and I started to get really good results. And so I said, okay, I'm now going to be anal about this, and I'm going to see how else we can use management skills to work with AI. And what I found is a lot of management skills transfer over to AI. And the other thing that I found is, as I worked with different people, I worked with managers, I worked with individual contributors, is that individual contributors struggled to work with AI because they're not used to doing things like checking the work, right? They have trained themselves that they don't question their peers. And so when AI tells them an answer that's obviously bogus, they're like, well, I shouldn't question that, right? Whereas anybody who's a manager who's been through the process of learning this, they know you don't accept the first answer you get, right? You're going to check it, you're going to make sure, you're going to go through some iterations. And so what I found is managers, good managers and experienced managers, have kind of superpowers this way, right? And so that's what my book is about, that's what my consulting business is about. And I took best practices, I'm still taking best practices, and I'm systematizing them, because a lot of these best practices do apply to technology transformations across the board. Some of them are AI specific, but when I started this, there was a lot of nothing. Nobody was talking the same things. Everybody said different things. I've actually started to see a consolidation in the past about 3-4 months where the other consultants that I talk to are starting to say the same things. And so we're starting to see best practices really form. All right, so I created the AI First Transformation Framework. I'm going to tell you about what that is. And let's move here. So I want to ask some really quick polls. This is a hand poll, okay? What is your responsibility in your organization? Okay, CEO, founder, the whole organization? Anybody? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, okay. Executives means an entire function. 1, 2, 3, okay, 4, all right. Managers, meaning you manage people, not necessarily projects or outcomes. 1, 2, 3. I'm assuming if you're at the higher levels, you do manage people.
I don't know. I've met some CEOs that don't manage people very well.
Okay, now team leader. Team leader means you may not manage the people officially, but you're responsible for making sure the outcome is correct. Team leaders? 1, okay. All right. And individual contributors, people who do the work, the people who actually get the work done. Okay, great. And consultants, freelancers, any other consultants in here? Okay, good, okay. So that means this is good to some extent. We're fairly heavy on executives and CEOs. And that's good because what I do is I don't teach you how to use AI. I teach you how to lead AI. Now that doesn't mean I don't teach you how to use AI, but the focus is on how to lead it. So now let's go to another one here and let's say, what are your biggest challenges leading AI? How many people have AI overwhelm? You can answer more than one time here. AI overwhelm meaning there's too much information. You don't know how to keep up, okay? All right, direction, you just don't know what to do next. Anybody? 1, 2, okay. All right, talent, you don't have the right AI talent or expertise. Okay, 1. Governance, you worry about compliance risks, AI shadow apps. Okay, good. Adoption, you have AI tools, you have training, and nobody's using it. Okay. Maybe you're not using it. Okay, consistency. You've got different teams and they get very different results from AI. You see this? Okay. All right, good. All right, and scaling. You can do pilots, but you don't know how to scale them into production. Anybody run into this? Okay. And value. You invested in AI, but ultimately you're not seeing ROI. Now that may not mean you're not getting it, but you don't know. Okay. All right. So these are the most common challenges that my clients have. AI overwhelm is one where literally every single client I have deals with AI overwhelm. Is there anything else, big challenges that you have that I didn't mention?
Part of it is, and this is a good problem to have, but it's sort of like the winning recipe. You don't want to know where the puck is, you want to know where it's going. Some of these tools are iterating so fast that I almost hesitate to bother getting engaged with doing a new workflow improvement because 3 weeks, 3 months from now, that's going to be the old one. And I don't know that there's a where, but that's a part of just the risk of it, but it's iterating so fast.
Yeah, and so for the audio here, the problem that he mentioned was that things are changing so fast, and you got new models coming out so often that you sometimes don't even want to start because you know it's going to be obsolete by the time you get the work done, right? And this is something we've seen before in software development, right? If you're in software development and you're working on a Java language app, you've got a Java language version that you're fixed on, and you have a whole process to change Java versions to make sure that when you change, it doesn't break your stuff, right? And we don't have that yet with AI models, but AI models change fast, and they change under the covers, and all of a sudden things break, right? Particularly if you're using prompt engineering, you got these nice, very well-tuned prompts, all of a sudden you get a new model, they're not tuned anymore, right? And so we're dealing with that with AI, and I expect that we'll see similar things that we see with software, where you have to build that process in to say you have to be able to fix the model and say we're not going to change it. Particularly if you automate things, you have to say we're going to fix the model, and then you're going to have to change it in a process. Yeah?
I would say the hype cycle, it creates a lot of anxiety, kind of similar to what you were saying, but like CEO sees a tweet, we saw Vanta in 5 days, what they spent the last 8 years doing, and it costs a fraction of what Vanta would cost, for example, with compliance. And they're like, well, why are we spending all this money with them? We could just replace them in 1 day.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's just hype mostly. So.
Yeah, so there is definitely a hype cycle. I tend to make that fall under overwhelm. So the issue that he brought up was there's so much hype that people who don't know much about AI in particular, they get sucked into the hype. And they believe that you can vibe code your way to a production software package. And the reality is you can't, right? Vibe coding works when you have an experienced engineer who knows what they're doing and knows how to turn that from a prototype into a product. Vibe coding will get you the prototype. You still need engineers to get to the product. Is that kind of along the lines of what you said? Yeah.
What about if AGI does it?
Well, we're quite a long way from AGI.
Really?
Yeah, we are really. So, and we don't really have time to go into all of this, but I will tell you that LLMs are not going to get to AGI, despite what certain people like AI's chief huckster, Sam Altman, says. We're not going to get to AGI with LLMs. And there's a lot of people saying this now. There are some people that have been saying it for a while. Gary Marcus has been saying this for years, but now Yann LeCun is saying the same thing. Some of the other people that invented the transformer architecture are now saying the same thing. We're going to have to do something else. It's probably going to be symbolic AI. And it's probably going to be a combination of symbolic AI and LLMs, because we're going to need both the symbolic understanding and we're going to need the statistical understanding of it. Yeah?
The reason why I say that is because I facilitated one time a thing about AI should be regulated, right? One of the things we got in, I thought the chair was going to start flying in here. This is a mild-mannered group of people, and they were not mild-mannered at all about this. However, the thing is if we realize that we can leverage technology, but always have the human heart that trumps all of the decisions that AI does, so that when we have people programming AI, and this is, I know, don't even throw their chair at me, but when we need like a digital fingerprint of who's coding that AI, programming that AI, training that AI, it can be an anonymous fingerprint, but then we know who is scaling something that's benefiting the greater good, and then who's scaling things that aren't, right? And so the whole point is we don't need to be hanging on to our jobs because we're so afraid that we're going to become obsolete. We are at some point, but it's going to be because we choose to, and we will work less and make a bunch more money and have a lot more.
Yeah, I'm going to cover some of that in my presentation because my framework addresses some of those issues, right? So I'm going to start moving on here a little quickly because if I don't, we're going to not be able to go through stuff. So first thing I'm going to do is give a reality check, right? Why you may be struggling or people you know may be struggling with AI. Second is I'm going to reframe it a little bit for you. And this is particularly for managers. This reframe helps to unlock a lot of AI capability. And then I'm going to talk about the landscape and the map, okay? And then I'm going to talk about the path forward. In the path forward, I'm going to give you 5 things that I hope you can take away today, right? I hate theory, right? I want everything to be practical. I'm going to try to give you 5 practical takeaways. And then just action. If you want to work with me in more detail or you want to see my book, we'll talk about that. Okay, so reality check. Hard truths about AI adoption. According to Boston Consulting Group, 74% of companies who attempt to adopt AI struggle to achieve value and scale. Okay, 42% abandon most AI initiatives entirely. Just over a quarter achieve some kind of production value, and only 4% reach high-value AI maturity. Now, there's other studies that say basically the same thing. There's the MIT NANDA study, if any of you saw that, they said basically, they're measuring it differently, but they're saying only about 5% achieve real value, right? And so let's all agree these numbers kind of suck, Okay, we've been doing this, the AI bandwagon, for 3 years now, right? Since November 2022. And the results have actually not changed a whole lot. Let's look at something else here. AI adoption is pulling back, okay? This data, this is a chart that was created by Apollo, but this data comes from the US Census Bureau. And it's a bi-weekly survey, they say, where they're asking actual business owners, how, are you actually adopting AI? Meaning that somewhere in your production workflows that actually gets to a customer, you're using AI somewhere, okay? And these numbers are pretty low. Not only are they low, but you can see we've got a pretty strong pullback here. The larger the firms, they were the ones leading the way. They're also the ones leading the way on the pullback. Smaller firms still, it's sort of flattening out here a little bit, but basically, bottom line is AI adoption is pulling back. And the other thing to understand here is the numbers are low across the board, right? So there was a recent McKinsey State of AI study, and they said that 88% of organizations are adopting AI. That's what they said. If you look at their definitions, though, that means if you got one guy in the corner who nobody talks to and he's using AI, that counts as adoption, okay? Real adoption, the Census Bureau's data is much better for adoption, right? It's saying who's actually really using it and getting value out of it. And the numbers are, they're averaging around 10% or less, okay? And they're starting to pull back. That's not good, right? So it's not good for me as a consultant, right? But it's not good for any of us because and I'll talk about this more later, but AI it's here to stay. It's not going to go away. And what everybody's trying to figure out is how do we use it? How do we use it to get real value out of it, okay? Now, let's talk about some of the ways where AI adoption fails. And I'm not going to go through each of these just because we need to move on a little bit here, but oops, let me go back here. So, focusing on technology over people, common failure mode, failing to communicate a plan. This goes along with this is not having a plan, right? Shiny object syndrome. We're going to use AI because it's AI, not because it's going to solve any problems. Expecting training alone to work, ignoring cultural obstacles, delegating too much or too little, and expecting magic. And we have a lot of AI hypesters to thank for this expectation of magic. All right. So now let's talk about AI overwhelm. A few people, you mentioned this. There's so much information out, right? There's thousands of new apps. I counted this up. There's thousands of new apps, tens of thousands of papers, more than apps, and hundreds of thousands of articles and posts on AI every month. Literally nobody can keep up with that. It's impossible. AI also has a universal scope. So in past technology transformations, most of them, they were more focused. So the CEO could say, hey, I'm gonna delegate that to operations, or I'm gonna delegate that to IT, and it was okay because it was focused. But AI affects every industry, every function, every role, and potentially every process. That is everything, right? That's the whole business. And this is one of the reasons that you can't know everything there is to know about every business. You just can't. AI is going to come into every industry, and it's going to do something, and we don't know what it's going to do in that industry. So trying to keep up with it is a fool's errand. And one of the 5 things I'm going to give you at the end here is some permission to not try to keep up with everything, and just a really simple process you can use to be able to spend at most like 10 to 11 hours a month to keep up with what's important for you. There's a low signal to noise ratio because everybody's figuring it out. So bottom line is nobody can keep up with it. So if you're overwhelmed with AI, great, congratulations. Welcome to literally everybody else on the planet. Like there is nobody that can literally keep up with this, right? So I give you permission to feel good about it. Okay, so the delegation trap. So delegating too much, right? And I talked about this. I'm going to go through it a little fast. The other delegation trap is delegating too little. Now, you would be surprised how many of my clients have delegated everything. They've delegated their entire AI initiative to IT or operations, and then they complain that they don't understand it, and I'm like, well, yeah, right, you delegated it away. But the other mistake that I do see some people take is the CEO gets in there, he wants to do everything, he wants to understand everything that's going on, he wants to run the projects. Okay, that's also a failure mode, right? If you're the CEO, you can't be doing that. You can't be down at that level for every single project you've got going on, right? So the question here is what's the right balance? The solution here is we're going to stop fighting AI, we're going to stop fighting overwhelm, we're going to stop fighting the delegation, we're going to try to understand what is its real value. Now, what really makes AI different and how that gives you as a manager or somebody who's experienced at delegation superpowers. All right. What's AI's most revolutionary feature? Let's let history be our guide here, okay? We had AI since it's before '97, but these are some of the big events that we're familiar with, right? So you had Deep Blue, you had the Netflix prize launches, you had Watson Wins Jeopardy, right? AlphaGo, GPT-1, GPT-2, GPT-3. GPT-1 was released in 2018, okay? We didn't get AI taking over the world until 2022, the end of 2022, right? So it's 4.5 years. And what happened in 2022 to 2023, right? Boom. Right? This is what like forced me to say I was going to have to do something about this, right? Something changed. What was it that changed? Anybody have a thought? You're probably all aware of this, although you may not have thought about it this way.
We started playing with it.
And why did we start playing with it? ChatGPT, right? ChatGPT is what made AI into a household name, right? Because in 2020, the capability was still there. That was GPT-3. But you weren't using it, and I wasn't using it because you had to be a programmer to use the thing, right? ChatGPT changed the game because, I'll skip ahead here. OpenAI put the chat in ChatGPT. So where it used to require a programmer, now it didn't. Now you could talk to it like a human, right? And that meant that people who knew nothing about the technology all of a sudden started playing with it, right? And started figuring out, wow, this is pretty wild, right? And then they started using it as a therapist and all kinds of other things that we probably should never do. But that's what happened, right? And so what I'm trying to help you understand is, this is what I believe. If you disagree, that's fine. But AI's power is not about its capability. We've had that capability for years. We've had big data for decades, right? AI's value is about access. It makes it very easy to use. And now as we connect AI to more tools and more of our back end, that access is now really powerful because those backends existed for years too, but you couldn't get at them without being a programmer. Now you can, right? So when you got MCP, Model Context Protocol, right, that allows you to say, hey, I've got this backend and I want to connect it to Claude, great. Now you just gave people the ability to ask a question in human language and get information that otherwise would have taken them weeks before. All right? Okay, now, what is AI's true revolutionary difference? So AI isn't human, and it never will be, but it is the first tool that we humans have created that we can treat as if it was human. We can talk to it, right? Started out with typing, but now you can actually talk to it. You can treat it like it's human. And that means that we can use our human skills to work with AI and get value out of it, okay? Any questions before I move on? This is kind of a key point. I just want to make sure everybody, you don't have to agree with it, but at least understand what I'm saying. Okay, all right, so what this means also is, what do managers do? Managers have human skills. Managers have to manage people. Managers have to delegate. They have to do all these things. And so that means managers already have skills that give you an unfair advantage. Because if you are good at delegating to your team, guess what? You can learn to be good at delegating to AI very quickly. And I see this. I have what I call an AI mastery session where I work with CEOs and I say, okay, we're going to teach you how to use AI in an hour and get better results than the guy over here in IT who's still treating it like a tool. So there's a common belief that it's a technical problem. The reality is it's a management problem. And your superpower is you already know how to do all these things. Delegate complex work, give clear direction, evaluate output quality, and iterate. Right? That's what it takes to be a manager. The twist is applying these skills to AI gives you kind of instant mastery over AI. And it doesn't take coding, it doesn't take prompt engineering, right? It just takes leadership. Right? Now, you will also see that new managers will struggle with it a little bit because they haven't learned the delegation yet. But what we're going to see going down the road, this is what I'm going to tell you, we're going to see individual contributors are going to have to learn management skills to be good at AI. Because eventually what we're going to see is everybody's going to have their own suite of AI agents that know how to help them do their work, and they're probably going to take those with them from job to job. That's going to be part of their skill set. And that means they're going to have to learn to manage those like they would be managing different people. Okay, the catch is delegation is a skill, right? It is something, I know when I was a new manager, I was not good at this. I had some challenges with it, right? So it's a skill that you have to learn, but it's a skill that we can train. So instead of just training everybody on technical AI, here's the technical skills, we can start to say, well, we're going to need to teach you how to delegate. We're going to need to teach you how to ask questions about the results you got back. And you see some of this, but when you reframe it as a management skill, it becomes a lot clearer. Hey, we do this with people, right? We can teach people to do this with AI. All right, and AI is not forgiving of shortcuts. Okay, so now let me talk about the context trap, okay? AI is not magic. This is one of the failure modes that people have in using AI. AI isn't magic. It can't read our minds any better than our human employees can, right? So if you're going to be a manager and say, go do this thing, and you've got a human employee, they're going to be like, well, what? How do you want me to do it? Where do you want me to go, right? And AI can't read our minds any better. We can teach it, by the way, to ask some of those questions better, but it can't read our minds. Let's look at the context we give to humans, okay? They go to college, they get job-relevant training, they get years of job-specific experience. They go through a hiring process where they have a job description, there's an interview, there's an offer. This is all context for what we want them to do when they work for us, right? We do employee onboarding where we'll teach them about our company and our procedures and, right, all of those things. We give them job-specific training. Okay, now we brought you on, now we're going to teach you how we do your job in this company. And then we ask them to do a small task, right? We don't bring somebody on and tell them to rebuild our entire website or whatever, right? Now let's look what we tend to give AI. No college or job-relevant training. I suppose you could say that the training data set has that, but years of job-specific experience, hiring process, employee onboarding, job-specific training. We give it none of this, and then we say, hey, go help me improve SEO on my whole site. And we get lousy answers because we haven't given it any context. And I mean, it's a big thing now. They talk about context engineering, right? That's more from an engineering standpoint. But it's the same thing. We have to give AI the context that it needs to be able to answer those questions. And we have a shortcut here. Because if we think about the context we give a human and we give AI the same context, it gets very good at answering questions, right? And in fact, with my clients, one of the things I teach them to do is what I call AI onboarding. For every AI assistant or AI agent, I say, okay, let's think about what information they need. Not just what's the knowledge base that you're going to give them about their job, but do they need to understand your policies and procedures? A lot of times they do, but nobody trains them, right? And then that forces you to go through iterations and say, that doesn't work, right? So AI, again, I'll just say this again, I want to slam this home a little bit. AI is delegation. If you know how to delegate, you can use AI and get results from AI by delegating, using those skills. All right. So what you now know is AI is a delegation problem, right? You have the skills, the context is crucial. What you need is not just what to do, but how and when. Okay, and this is where my book comes in and where the framework comes in. AI transformation is a journey with predictable stages. I have seen this over and over again. And I've seen other consultants that say the same thing. One of the consultants I follow a lot, which some of you, if you haven't heard of her, Allie K. Miller, right, she's very good at providing things that are higher level. So if you are a manager, whatever, it's something that's very useful. Another, if you just want a recommendation for somebody who's much more technical, but excellent, his name is Devansh, D-E-V-A-N-S-H, and he has a Substack called Artificial Intelligence Made Simple. He goes into deep dives on the market that nobody else comes close to touching. All right, so the AI First Transformation Framework was developed and created, and I worked with my clients on it so that I can give people a roadmap, what to do next. Because the first challenge all my clients tell me is they overwhelm. They don't know they don't even know what to watch. The second challenge is they just like, what do I do next? I don't know. Everybody's saying something different. What's next? So let's talk about the landscape and the map. The complete path here, there's 6 predictable stages to AI transformation. Okay. Number 1 is awareness. Okay, you're aware that AI might help your company, but you don't know how. And there's still a lot of people in this mode. Number 2 is experimentation. Everybody who gets to the successful stage starts with experimentation. And if they don't, they have to go back. Because the experimentation is when both your leadership team and your implementation team learn what works and what doesn't. Right? You can read all the articles you want, but until you have your hands on the keyboard and you're trying things out and you realize something doesn't work and this thing breaks and it doesn't have enough context and memory to do this thing, you don't really get it. Number 3 is adoption. And this is where multiple teams are using AI in day-to-day workflows. I say multiple because, again, you see this case where you've got one guy off in the corner and he's killing it with AI and nobody else is touching it, and they're like, well, you know, we adopted. No, you didn't adopt, right? It's when people are using it in day-to-day workflows, they're not playing with it anymore, it's actually providing some value, and it's multiple teams. Number 4 is value. So one of the things I see a lot is people get to adoption and they're using AI and they're like, yes, we're using AI, we're using it every day, that's great. And then I say, okay, is it helping? What do you mean, is it helping? Are you getting any actual business value out of it? Do you know if it actually is better than what you had before? And a lot of people say, well, how do I know? Did you measure before you started it? Do you have any way to measure what your value is, right? And so a lot of organizations, they will get to adoption because this is what they were driven to do. And then at some point they'll have the epiphany and say, maybe we should start measuring this thing and making sure it's actually doing something for us here. And some of them will back stuff out because they'll realize that AI not only isn't helping them, it's actually making things worse. It's actually slowing things down. So that's a change people have. And then transformation is where, okay, now you've learned. Now you've figured out how to get value out of AI. And now you're going to go systematically through your functions, through your roles, through your processes, and say, where can AI help? Where can it not help, right? Let's start doing this systematically. And you start to build it into your existing processes. And then finally, just the way things are. Now, I know of no one where AI is just the way things are. Maybe not. So WhisperFlow is a company that they make, I don't know if you've heard of WhisperFlow. They make this microphone and they make this software where you can just whisper to it, where you're constantly talking and whispering to AI, and it's helping you do things on your computer, it's navigating for you. They're the closest I've seen. But the best way to understand what this is, just the way things are, is how many of you have seen lately a chief internet officer? Okay? How many of you have seen somebody get excited, oh, I used the internet today? You don't, right? Because the internet, but when it started, believe me, I lived through that. When it started, people were like, it's going to change the world, it's the new economy. Well, you know what? It wasn't the new economy. It is very powerful, it did change the world, but not in the way anybody said, right? And it's gotten to the point now where you don't think about the internet. It's just assumed. You're going to use the internet for your business. AI is going to get there too. And the companies that recognize that they need to get there and take the steps to get there earlier than their competitors are going to have an advantage, right? So I'm going to go through these just kind of quickly so you understand what they look like, but we're short on time, so I'm not going to go through them in detail. Right, so stage 1 is awareness. You know AI is there. You know it might help you. In the book and I have a download on my site that you can get when you order the book through my site. Each of these stages I've broken down to say, okay, what is it? What does it feel like? What challenges, what are the common roadblocks and challenges you run into? What are your next steps, right? How do you get from the beginning of this phase to the end so that you can get to the next phase, right? There's steps in there. And then I talk about there's a gate you have to pass through to get to the next stage. So like the gate for awareness is leadership must explicitly encourage experimentation with AI, and they must allocate time and resources. Because if leadership doesn't do this, then your team, even if they're excited, are going to be like, well, are they going to get mad at me because I spent my time on AI? And if I use my own AI tools because they didn't allocate any resources, they're going to get mad at me for using a shadow app, right? So you have to, leadership has to make it clear to your employees and your team that they are encouraged to do it. And there's a lot of ways to do this, but that's kind of the core of it. Now, I'm not going to go through too many more of these. What I am going to do is just talk briefly about adoption. All right, so the other thing that I go through in the book and in the download is that there's evidence of which stage you're in. Okay, and this is helpful because if you are a manager managing a larger organization, you can actually look for evidence, right? If your team says, yes, we're using AI, it's great. Let's look for the evidence. Let's make sure you're actually doing that. And if you're an investor and you're looking to invest in other companies, you can also look for the evidence, right? The founder, if you're an investor, you're looking to maybe invest in a startup, and the founder says, yes, we're using AI everywhere, it's great. You can ask the question, great. Let's see the data. Let's see the evidence, right? And so for adoption, this is where most people that I work with, that I start working with, are between experimentation or adoption, okay? And the key thing to understand is when you get to adoption, most people will get to some level of adoption. And they'll get stuck there. They'll get stuck there before they get to value and be able to do that. And it's important to understand that when you want to get past just adoption, you need to have demonstrated alignment between AI usage and tangible business results. And the easiest way to do that, in fact, there's 2 stages, right? There's the adoption is stage 3 and the value is stage 4. If you are aware of this, you can actually start your pilots in stage 2, your experiments, with the goal of getting value from them. And you can start to measure, and that means you can now compress some of these stages so they take less time, right? So that awareness is really helpful for you. All right, and I'm not going to go through any more of these just because we're short on time. I am going to talk just a little bit about stage 6 and what that means, right? So stage 6 is different from the others in one very important way. All the other 5 are operational. You've got to set things up, you've got to train people, you've got to do all that. Stage 6 is different because it's not an operational change, it is a culture change. You hit stage 6 when people stop thinking about AI as if it's special, right? And they just start, this is just the way things are done. And that means that if your goal is to eventually get here, when you get into stage 4 or stage 5, you need to start working with your culture team, your HR or whoever else that is, to say, okay, how do we get this as part of the culture? Is it, you're going to need it as part of reviews, you're going to need to put it into job descriptions for new hires, you need to put it into your onboarding so that you can build this into the culture, and when people come in, it's not something that's different. All right. Okay, so now what does all this help you with? The 6 stages are valuable in another way because they are valuable both at the macro level and the micro level. So you can use this to evaluate your entire company. Where are we? Where are we at the highest level, right? Maybe we've got a couple departments that are doing great. Well, that means you're still in adoption because you don't have everybody doing it, right? You can move that down to any level of team you want, and you can start evaluating where is this team. So you can have your function heads go and say, I'm going to evaluate my function on where we are. You can have it go all the way down to the individual team leaders where they can say, okay, where are we? And how do we get to the next level so that we can now start leading the pack, right? So that's an important thing to understand about looking at this. And then it helps you identify where you are, which, by the way, is the number one thing that my clients tell me was valuable for them. Literally, I give this to them in my first consulting session, and the first thing when I come back to them a month or 2 later and I say, what's been valuable, they almost all say, it was really helpful to know where I am because that made it more clear what I need to do next. It helps you avoid common mistakes. I've identified 27 AI failure modes. These are the modes that prevent people from being successful with AI. And I'm not even sure I'm going to put them all in the book, in a chapter in the book, because that would be depressing. But there are these failure modes, and when you understand the 6 stages, you can start to avoid some of these common failure modes. It helps you decide what to do next. And this, I get down to a very granular level. In fact, if you take the assessment, if you get the download and take the assessment on my site, it has 10 questions you go through and then one final gate question to tell you where you are. And then it's going to say, now we're going to help you find your next step, because there are certain steps you need to go through to get out of that stage. And have you done this? Have you done this? Have you done this? Great. Now you know. This is the next step that I would tell you to do. It helps you plan to move forward because you can target that gate. When you know what the gate is, you can say, okay, we need to do what I can create a mini plan to say, I want to get through this gate. Right? And that means you don't have to come up with this huge strategy plan, which, by the way, a lot of leaders do without knowing anything about AI. They've never used it themselves. They come up with this huge strategy, and then you ask them, great, how much do you use AI? And they're like, I don't. So how do you know your strategy has any bearing on reality, any relation to reality? You don't, because you don't really understand what AI is, and you probably still believe the AI fanboys telling you that it's magic when it's not. Again, it allows you to gather evidence, and it allows you to evaluate what other organizations and teams are, both yours within your organization and outside. Okay, now let's talk about the roadmap. So the stages, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, great. Now I've taken the stages as I've worked with my clients, and I've said, okay, let's break this down a little bit more concretely, because if I tell you to get from stage 1 to stage 2 that you need to start experiments, that's great, but how do you know how to select your projects? How do you know who's going to run the projects, right? So there are these steps that have to go on, and so I've broken these down into an implementation roadmap that has 3 phases. I call them quick wins, big wins, and the forever wins, because CEOs like wins. And the quick wins is things that you can get done fast and demonstrate value, or learn quickly what isn't going to work, okay? And you'll see here what comes into this. I'm not going to go into this in a lot of detail. I just want you to understand how I break it down. The big wins is where you say, okay, now that we've gotten some pilots and we know it's working, we're going to figure out how to get value. We're going to choose some big important processes for us where we have potential to gain value from AI, and we're going to target a few of those, right? But you can't do the big wins, and this is one of the failure modes, is jumping in early and saying, oh, we're going to do this big, huge process, and yet your team doesn't even know how to use chatbot yet. You got a problem, okay? You don't know what you need to know to be able to complete those big wins until you've gone through the quick wins phase. And then the forever win is where you get to the point where you're now trying to build AI into your organization. I call it building AI into your team's DNA, right? Where it's becoming part of the woodwork. And I break it down into alignment and execution, and there's a couple of reasons for this, but the most important one is that when you understand that you have to prepare, you have to get your strategy aligned, you have to get tools in place, you have to train certain people, and then you need to execute. Alignment is the area where you as a leader need to be involved, okay? You can't delegate that, because otherwise you're delegating the strategy for your team or your organization, right? As a CEO, as the top dog, you shouldn't be delegating the strategy. That's your job. Execution, however, you not only can, but you should delegate. And I'm going to go through here really quickly here, right? So just to give you some idea, this is not a complete list, but these are some of the smaller tasks that are part of this framework. Now, when you get to execution, execution is time boxed, right? Alignment is not time boxed, because another failure mode is jumping into AI execution when you're not ready. You don't have tools defined. You haven't come up with any sort of plan to let people know what they should and shouldn't do, right? You have no governance in place or anything, no risk assessment. So alignment can't be time boxed, because otherwise you're going to make some mistakes. But execution should be time boxed, right? Because that gives you urgency. And again, I'm going to go through these pretty quick, and just to let you know what I talk about in terms of time box. Quick wins, 30 days. Typically, I will sit down with a team, as long as they're a reasonably small company, right? If it's 100 to 150 employees, typically, I will sit down with them in 2 days on site, and we will get their alignment for the quick wins done. And then 30 days after that, they will have projects that are completed, right? That's how fast we can get to the point where they now have something working. The big wins take longer, right? It's 90 days, because now they're going to have to learn more skills. And when you get to the forever win, I tell people to start with a 180-day plan. That's going to get you to a certain point. Once you get to that point, you can reevaluate. Maybe you say another 180-day plan, whatever it is. But that's ongoing. So why is it 3 times 2 instead of going through the 6? By the way, the phase 1 is stages 1 and 2. Phase 2 is stages 3 and 4. And phase 3 is stages 5 and 6. Okay, so I'm combining them in there. And I talked about this. Strategic decisions need time. Tactical execution needs urgency. And the real value out of the alignment execution separation is it makes it clear what you can delegate and what you can't. And you don't have to follow my roadmap at all. But it is important to recognize that one of the key things that a lot of leaders are struggling with is knowing what to delegate. And so at some point you have to ask that question: what can we delegate and what can we not? Okay. How the roadmap helps. I already covered this pretty much. The other thing I wanted to mention here is this is designed to progressively expand your training, your projects, and your delegation, right? So instead of trying to take everything on at once, we're going to go train the whole organization, and then because we don't have any projects in place, they're not going to use AI really for a year, and then a year later they don't remember the training anyways. So it always starts with leadership for me, right? We start with the executive team, and I say, you're going to learn how to use AI yourself, and we're going to get you some processes in your daily workflows that are going to help you, because that's the best way for you to understand what AI can and can't do. Then we're going to go and create what's called a community of practice. In large organizations, this may be a center of excellence. In smaller organizations, it may be an informal gathering, but you're going to find people in your organization, typically who are respected in the organization so that other people are willing to follow them, and who are interested in AI, and you're going to say, okay, these are going to be the spearhead for our projects. They're going to be the ones implementing the quick wins, and then when it's time to go to the big wins, they're the ones that are going to train the implementers for the big wins. So in each phase, you're training more people. It starts with leadership in the COP. In the second phase, it's the implementers for the big wins. And in the third phase, now you get to all hands. Now you're training everybody because now you're ready to actually have them use it because you're building it into processes that will affect them. Same is true with delegation, right? The CEO needs to own the alignment in phase 1. In phase 2, the CEO can actually delegate that alignment to the function heads who are responsible for those projects. Doesn't have to do it all themselves, right? So it gives you a way to progressively do it down so you're not trying to do everything in one. I didn't talk about the 5+1 pillars here. I'm not gonna, just because we don't have the time, and that's why I took it out. But the 5+1 pillars are principles you can use to help guide your strategic decisions when something outside the plan comes into play. One of them is AI first. Another one is human-centered, right? To follow on to one of the other questions earlier. And that's something that's in the book if you want to get the book. Okay, so the path forward, how to get there from here. These are 5 things I'm going to give you that I hope you will be able to use at least a few of. All right? All right, number 1, stop chasing AI overwhelm. There's 2 tools I use and that I coach my clients to use. Number 1 is strategic ignorance. Daily, you spend 15 minutes. You're scanning the AI news. If anything does not affect your bottom line, immediate risks, or your competition, forget about it. Kick it down the road. Okay, you're going to save it, but you don't need to worry about it. It's not going to affect you today. Next, you go to a weekly. There's a 1 hour a week where you look at everything you saved and you say, okay, we're going to expand the scope a little bit here. Is anything here going to affect my operations, my adoption barriers, my reputation risk? If so, now we may start to look at those. And then third is a monthly, and the monthly is a team review. So I tell, I have a CEO, I say, okay, each of your function heads is going to do the same thing, and you're going to come together once a month, and they're going to bring you theirs. So you don't have to all look at everything. You're going to bring them together, and now you're going to ask the question is it immediately actionable? Is it something we can do right now? And if it's not, drop it. You know why it's okay to drop it? Because I guarantee you if it's going to affect your business strongly, it's going to come back and hit you upside the head again, right? You don't have to track everything, and that's where this next piece comes in, is just-in-time learning. With AI, you don't have to learn everything before you make all your decisions, right? In the past, we didn't have that way to learn quickly, and so it was hard. You had to read a lot of books, you had to do this. Great, you had to try to keep up with everything. You can't now, and you don't need to, because once something comes up, you're like, okay, we looked at this, I kicked it down the road, or we didn't look at it, and now it's about to bite us. Great. Now I can go learn. I can go sit down with Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini and say, okay, I need to learn about this quick. Give me the outlines, let's dig deep into it, and you can do that just-in-time learning. And again, I'm not going to go into all the details here. Okay, now, that's number 1. Number 2, identify where you are and what's next. Okay, remember there's 6 stages. Identify which stage you're in. All right, the AI Leadership Assessment is a download you can get on my site. Go get that. And I'll give you the cheat code, okay? You don't have to actually buy my book on my site to get the downloads. Okay, if you say, yes, I want to buy your book, great. It's going to take you to a page where you then have to click another button to go to Amazon and buy it. Just don't click the other button, you'll still get the downloads, okay? So I'll save you the $3 if you don't want to buy the book. But right now, while it's in pre-order, it's still only $3. A little less than $3 for the book. When it goes on sale, after the first push, when it goes on sale, it's going to be $22. So you can save yourself a little money if you want it now. So you take the leadership assessment, find your next best step. Again, this is in the leadership assessment, and create the plan to pass through your gate. Like I said before, create a mini plan how you're going to get there. All right. Select your AI projects carefully. All right. So another failure mode is biting off more than you can chew. And so I have a framework I call Paced ROI, which is questions you can ask to say, is this a project we should be taking on right now or not? Okay? And it's designed so that the paced portion applies to the quick wins, and the ROI portion comes in later when you get to the big wins. Because you don't really need to worry about ROI when you're in the quick wins. Your job is to learn. Now, if you get some that are valuable, great. But if you just learn what works and what doesn't, you'll be successful there. All right, so, and I'm not going to go through these because, again, this is something that's in the book. But basically it's saying, okay, what problem are we trying to solve? Avoid the failure mode of just using AI because it's cool, right? Find an actual business problem you can solve. Figure what application are you going to use AI? How are you going to use AI that's going to actually help you here? And when you look at the second half here, the value complexity matrix, this is giving you, right? It's telling you that there's certain types of things you can do with AI that are low complexity. They're easy to get started on. And there are ones that have high value, medium value, low value, right? If you start over here, you're in for a world of hurt. Even if you succeed, you're in for a world of hurt because you just spent a whole lot of time and money to get something that's not going to give you a whole lot of value, right? But if you start here and say, okay, what can we do with this? Great, let's do a few things we can do there and then scale them, and then we can start moving. Either say, hey, this is good and I'm going to get something medium value because I know it'll give me some value, or we can get to a little bit more complexity. So now instead of trying to learn everything at once, you're learning a few skills here, you're learning some new skills here, you're learning some new skills here. Right? So it helps you to pick projects that you can complete and get value from. All right. Number 4, choose and configure your AI tools for access. Okay, most AI tools are not configured to maximize user interaction. They're just not. In fact, they're getting better, but like, when I started doing this 6 months ago, it was like pulling teeth sometimes to get AI because, let's say, for example, I talk to a human and I give you a vague statement and you're going to ask me a question back. And we're going to have a conversation, and the context is going to be established through conversation. When I started, AI did not do that. If I said, help me with my SEO, AI is going to go off and give me this whole huge PM that has nothing to do with my website and my business. That's the way it was. Now they've built it into the models more where it's asking you clarifying questions. It's still not great though. I still have to reinforce that to get it to ask me real questions that are important. But we can, and this is what I say, this is what I mean when I say we can intentionally configure tools to pull users up. And when I say pull users up, you're going to see what I mean, why I say that. But basically what gives AI the maximum access is when we can interact with it in a way that's easier for us. Okay, so what we're trying to do is maximize our interaction and require less work from us as humans to tell AI what we want from it. Right? I would rather have AI ask me a question and I say, oh yeah, I forgot that, do this. Right? And that's where I have it now, which is great. Because I don't have to use prompt engineering to come up with this big huge prompt. I can say I want to do this thing and it's going to say, okay, well let's talk about what you mean by that, right? And it's going to ask me questions, we go back and forth, just like Tim would if I gave him a vague statement or question. All right. And so one of the things that I talk about is you need to look at your tools to configure them for maximum access. This means choosing which models you're going to use. If you can, lock down the models because they do change and things get very weird. Select the right tools, okay? And I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit here so you see what this is referring to is, I call this the AI interaction pyramid, okay? This is how we use AI. How we treat AI actually determines how much value we can get out of it. If you treat AI like a tool where you're telling it exactly what you want, exactly how you want the result back, right? You're basically programming it, you're treating it like a tool. And you know what? Most programmers still do this that I know that work with AI. A lot of them do this instead of having a conversation because this is what they're comfortable with. Most people, what ChatGPT did was pulled us all up here. We got to where we had an assistant. This is where now you can ask something, get an answer back, but you're still the one initiating the sequences. You're still the one saying what you want AI to do, right? And you're being very specific like you would with a very junior assistant or an intern. Now we can get to where you're a collaborator. When you get to a collaborator, when you use AI right now and you ask it a question, does it give you things you didn't ask for, right? If it's giving you suggestions you didn't ask for and it's trying to get kind of ahead of what you're thinking, it's gotten into collaborator mode. This is what a human does too, right? We work with humans and they say, oh, well, this other thing came to mind, right? So you get to collaborator mode. Coworker is where the transition here is that when you get to coworker, AI is choosing when to do its own work. It may be choosing what its projects are, but at the very least, it's choosing when to actually do the work. So when we start looking at ChatGPT or Claude and you can schedule to have certain tasks work, now we're getting it to where it's more of a coworker because we don't have to ride it and tell it when we want it to do what. It's going to go ahead and do it itself. And when you get into some of the agent orchestration platforms, you can get some fairly complex conditions that determine when it's going to run. As a teammate, this is where you have multiple AI agents and multiple humans all working together. So when you're looking at AI as a coworker, typically it's you with your AI agent and you're not sharing it. When you get to teammate mode, you're sharing. You're sharing the agents. They're talking to each other without you sometimes, right? So in terms of marketing, everybody's looking at getting to, we've got B2C, we've got B2B, they're talking about A to A, right? How do you get agents that are going to be doing transactions themselves without people? Which is a little crazy, but it's what they're talking about, right? It's what they're trying to get to. And then finally, AI as authority. This is the one that people find icky. Okay, this is where AI is making the decisions, and we as humans are required to do what it tells us to do, or there's some consequences for us. Okay? Are we here yet anywhere? I don't know of anybody that's here. And not only do I not know of it, I know that a lot of the AI regulations are looking at trying to close this off. But I guarantee you it's going to happen. They may put it through a human who has to sign off on it, but the decision is going to be made by AI, right? And one of the things I do, I tell people is that there's a very good use case for where this would be valuable. I used to fly around the world fixing very complex systems. I was the top guy. If I flew to some place and I told the local service team that they needed to do X, Y, and Z, and they didn't do it, guess what? They were in trouble, right? Because I was the expert. Well, there's a lot of companies, big semiconductor equipment companies, a lot of these, they have these very fancy equipment. And I guarantee you they could program an AI to know more about this equipment than most of their local teams. And so there is value for them in creating an AI agent that tells the local team what to do. And essentially what that means is we humans end up as the physical interface for AI, right? We're doing what it tells us to do. And by the way, if any of you feel this is really icky, when was the last time any of you changed the printer paper in your printer? Your printer told you what to do and you did it and you didn't even think about it. We will get there with this. Okay. All right. 5 last. How are we on time? Are we over yet?
Yeah, we're about there.
Okay. All right. Okay. So last one here. Integrate AI. Don't add it. Don't create parallel systems. It's a failure mode. Okay. You've already got HR systems. You've already got review systems. You've already got all this stuff. Figure out how to integrate AI into it instead of trying to create something separate. All right. Now, I'm going to skip through this one. It talks about what it looks like, some of the value, but since we're at the end here, I want to get over. Okay. All right, so what to do next? I have one special offer for everybody in this room. I do what I call an AI strategy mapping session. This is where I work with a CEO or leader, and I say, okay, I've got the 3x2 framework. I've got the stages. I will work with you. I'll sit down with you for 2 to 4 hours, and I will customize this for you so you now have a plan that will take you through the next 90 to 180 days for how to build AI in your team and how to build it up, okay? And so, again, I'm a little short here because I talk too much, but this is normally a fairly expensive thing. If you reach out to me and schedule a meeting with me in the next 5 days, then I'll give it to you for $749. And also, if you refer other people to me, then for every person you refer to me, I'll give you $250 off. So if you refer 3 people to me, you get it for free. And they don't have to sign up, but they need to actually book a meeting with me, all right? All right, and how to work with me. Again, I'm a consultant. You may be familiar with how a lot of consultants work, but basically do it yourself, done with you, done for you. I'm a fractional CIO. When I do that, I'm working with larger companies, okay? Typically companies with at least $10 million in revenue. That's where I am working as part of their team. For smaller companies, typically I'm doing it with you, which means I'm doing consulting, which means we're going to meet once a month, or we're going to meet 2 or 3 times a month, and I will help you get, when I say consulting, what I'm really saying is I'm going to help you figure out what your next step is. Every time we meet, I'm going to say, okay, let's talk about where you are, what you did, and here's what you need to do next, right? So that you don't have to learn this whole thing, right? You don't have to buy the book and memorize it to try to figure out what your next step is. I can just say, okay, here's where you are. Here's some of the things that I've seen. Here's what your next step is. And then do it yourself is the AI strategy mapping. The goal is to give you a map you can do yourself. You can implement yourself. The other do it yourself is the book. In fact, one of the reasons I wrote the book is because not everybody can hire a consultant, right? So I want something that I've seen these failures enough. We can avoid most of the failures. This book will give you a way to avoid a lot of those failures and know what to do next without you having to pay me or anybody else how to get you moving forward. Okay. Any questions there?
I have one.
Yes.
When is it going to be an agent we can just call and use? All right.
I've considered it, but as someone else mentioned here, it moves so fast that by the time I create the agent, it probably will be obsolete.
Well, guys, what do you think? Yeah? Well,
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
thank you so much. We didn't leave any time for questions really, but we are going to head over for lunch. Okay. If anybody would like to talk to John,
Yeah.
I'm sure he would
If you have any questions,
available.
please grab me.
Okay, guys? Thank you for coming.